to what extent do you think Venezuela, that military operation caused some hubris? Because I think it was Lindsey Graham who went out tweeting something along the line that, well, I'm sure the Ayatollahs are watching this. Now they know what's going to happen if they don't bow down. I thought that was confusing because I don't understand what one has to do with the other. It wasn't a large, spectacular war using the whole navy. They went in and kidnapped the president and then pulled out before. And also that was Venezuela, which realized they didn't really want to punch back too hard because then it would trigger a larger war, which is not in its interest. But what does this have to do with Iran? Are they going to go in and, kidnap the leader and take them back to the United States? It's hard to see what one this is a very different animal we're talking. This would be a major war. So the hubris doesn't seem warranted, I guess.
Hubris is a massive problem just across the board. But this is just a priority and a primary effort of the information war. This is just trying to convince people in the United States that we have this most incredible, as Caroline Leavitt said from the podium in the White House just yesterday, and in advance of these the round of negotiations in Oman that happened today between the United States and Iran. She said they need to keep in mind that we have the most powerful military in the history of the world, and they should think about that whenever these negotiations happen. Many people believe that, and so to foster that belief, we have to make the argument that what we did in Venezuela was a masterpiece of military art that only the United States can do, and that you can't do anything to stop us. Not mentioning that, by the way, we had a mole on the inside, massively insiders, so that most of their air defense didn't even function. They did not take into account, did not take under fire, especially our helicopters. So a lot of that dramatic scene, because I think a lot of this was literally intentionally made for TV moment to have all these explosions to make it look like we really accomplished something. But when you see all those helicopters that were flowing, they're great imagery. I mean, it's great video. You see all these helicopters that get highlighted against these explosions in the back and the flames and everything else. And I'm just telling you, a helicopter, that many helicopters just flying at that low of territory, somebody with an AK-47 rifles, they could just riddle those things and knock down half of them from just ground fire if they were taken under fire. But it appears that there was a deal made with somebody on the inside of Venezuela so that didn't happen, so that the air defense missiles didn't fire, because the worst of like a Stinger or shoulder-fired situation, much less their hardened sights, could have knocked every one of those helicopters down with relative ease. That close in. They didn't take them under fire because we had the insider here. So then what we did was just pick him up, because there was an arrangement made on the inside, and they grabbed him and took him and flew him right off. 2.5 hour operation. Most of it was made for TV stuff. That has literally nothing to do with what the situation in Iran is. Now, for Lindsey Graham to say that, either he's incredibly naive and, I'm just going to, sorry to be blunt, stupid, or that his intention is not to try and make the Iranian people think anything, or the leaders, but to make the more Western people think that we are all that, and that we are that powerful, and that, yeah, those Iranians should be very scared, because the Iranians, number one, you can't go in there with a Delta Force and just snatch and grab somebody. There's not going to be any insider help this time, I assure you. And very much unlike the Venezuelan military, the Iranian military has demonstrated it has profound capabilities in missile warfare, and it's probably better with the air defense than what we've been led to believe. We'll find out, I think. It's not great, and it can be greatly diminished by what our capabilities have, so I don't want to minimize that either. But if we start flying aircraft in that region, I think we'll find out to our chagrin that they have some anti-aircraft capabilities, and they can knock some of our aircraft down. They can, with some of their patrol boats and some of their fast boats and some of their kilo submarines, they can potentially knock out some of our ships even. So we can be harmed this time, very much unlike what the Venezuelans could do, even if they wanted to have fought. They just didn't have the capacity, and they would have taken it in the teeth, and they couldn't have been shot back from what I can understand. So those two situations are as different as day is from night.
Well, a key difference, which seems to be perhaps one of Trump's miscalculation, is the idea that they can do a limited strike. I think the Venezuelans were happy to take a bloody nose and walk away from it without more pain. But for the Iranians, if you let the U.S. come in and do a little bit of bombing, which has the purpose of degrading the government, weakening the country further, of course, opening up for future bombing, the goal is to weaken the country with the end goal being very explicit now of regime change. But in a country like Iran, where regime change, there is no replacement regime. No one can unify the country. It's not just toppling the government. It means balkanizing the country, possibly destroying all of Iran. This is an existential threat. They can't take one on the chin and just walk away happy they didn't get more. I think when the foreign minister says we're going to hit back with everything we have, even if it's a small strike, I think there's good reasons behind this, just because it makes sense. Yeah. Do you think this is the logic based on the amount? Because I think Trump brought in military equipment or weapons intended for, a few days of bombing. Then we tell the Iranians, okay, we're done now. We walk home, and the Iranians are just happy that it's over. Do you think this is a miscalculation?
That would be illogical if that's what he was doing. But let's look at the two situations here. With the Venezuelan situation, they had incentive to take it on the chin, as you pointed out there, because we clearly communicated to them, we just want Maduro and your oil. And as long as I get both of those, you guys can stay, your regime can stay in power. So all these people, all the military people, all the political folks, they can keep their positions, and they can keep their graft, and they can keep their corruption. And there's, it's legendary how bad it is there. But we gave them a motive. We gave them an out and saying, yeah, you work with me here, you can keep this stuff here. On the other hand, we're signaling the opposite in Iran. We're saying that you can't even live, that there's no leaving any of you guys in charge. So if Trump has in mind, and if that's actually what he's thinking, he's going to have a demonstration and he's going to blow up a bunch of stuff and then walk away and somehow call a victory here, he's sabotaged his own possibility by communicating that nothing but regime change is the option. So that whatever may have been, if they, for example, said, all right, we're saying that out in public, but in private, we're telling you, all we're going to do is we're going to come in, we're going to have a demonstration here, and then we'll say, we'll wag our finger at you and say, oh, don't do it again. But that's all we're going to do. I don't think that the Iranian side would, number one, believe us, that that's all we're going to do. And they would be fools to believe a word of it. The only thing that I can imagine, I'm trying to put myself in their position militarily, is I would expect you to be lying to me, as you have so many times, that I couldn't trust you as far as I could throw you, and that the likelihood is that because I know a lot of these people genuinely want me dead, then I would say, all right, I'm gonna use everything that I have while I still can. So if you start this, I'm gonna now try to reestablish deterrence on my terms, which is no more of this freebie stuff. No more of this like assassinated Soleimani and almost nothing gets done about it. No more destroying our embassy like Israel did in Syria. No more assassinating people in our kid. No more assassinating our leaders in their apartments, in their families. No more assassinating our scientists, etc. And nothing happening, because it'll never stop. Now then, if you strike one thing, we're going to try and reestablish deterrence to make sure you pay a bloody nose, that your people get killed, and that your cities get hit here in Israel, and then we'll see how you want to play then. That's what I would do. I can't imagine just human nature, them not doing that and just saying, well, I really hope that they aren't going to kill us this time and they'll just give us another big bloody nose. It seems to me that would be illogical for Iran to do. But I don't know. I'm so frustrated, because I see radically mixed messages from our side that seem to imply two different things. And now look at the firepower that's been assembled here, and it doesn't match getting a regime change. You've got to have an army if you want a regime change of that nature, and if you want to defend your people in the area. We don't have enough combat power to match our rhetoric, so I don't know where this is going.
I think many people just want to pull into that war, because once the war is going, then at least the intentions will be directed towards defeating Iran, and then maybe the capabilities comes after. So I think they're underselling what capabilities there are just to get the war going. Again, you want to make a war sound like a cakewalk. You're going to be welcomed with flowers, and then of course deal with the consequences later. But in terms of being no trust, I think this point is sometimes missed on the political leadership. not just in the US, but Europe as well. I saw J.D. Vance make the comment that he thought that Iran was I think it's more or less a direct quote, a very weird country, because when they do diplomacy, you can't even talk to the person in charge, Khamenei. And then Rubio said the same thing, more or less. And I thought, well, last time you had negotiations, you said you were close to a deal, and you launched a surprise attack on them, attacked their nuclear facilities with all the possible consequences that could have had. And now they're talking about maybe assassinating the leadership. So, of course, they're going to put their key guys, not put them, I guess, in a position where they can get knocked out. It's just very strange to see that the assumption is that there will be trust just because we say we're not going to do this. But on the issue of deterrence, is this something you feel is being not appreciated because the need to restore it? Because in the European setting, I always make the point that this is what's going to get the Europeans into a direct war with Russia. That is, we don't seem to understand that they have to restore their deterrent, that we attack their, the radars, which they needed for detecting a nuclear strike. We attacked their nuclear retaliatory capabilities, that is, their bombers. We attacked Putin's residence where there might be a nuclear command center. We are attacking their nuclear deterrent. We've been bombing them. We openly say that it's our men, our weapons, all of this, and the Russians aren't doing anything. There's a desperate need there now to restore their deterrent, and they don't understand that in Europe, I think, and that's what's going to put, I guess, trigger a war. But do you see this? Do they appreciate all this? The need for Iran, that they just can't become another Iraq or Syria, where the US or Britain or Israel just every now and then bomb a little bit, and the Iranians don't want to make a big deal out of it. Do they understand that they see this, what's happening around the region, with great concern?
No, they don't at all. They think that this is going to be like, I just ticked off that whole lineage of things that either U.S. or Israel or U.S. and Israel has done to Iran over a number of years, and really you can even go back decades before that, where all kinds of people keep getting assassinated, where cyber attacks have destroyed a bunch of stuff, and there's literally never been any kind of real retaliation from Iran, and so they believe that will perpetually be the case. So no one even thinks in terms of will Iran or should Iran reestablish deterrence, because there's not any right now. We're not deterred from anything because there's no consequence to us. So we keep killing people here, assassinating people there, launching some missiles there, and we expect them to do nothing. And I think that's the case here. Like with the Yemenis, that they may fire a few things here and there, but pretty much we can go in and we can just blow up a bunch of stuff and it's not a big deal. They're not going to do much to us. I think they tried to attack one of our ships at one point, but we were able to successfully get out of that, and then we stopped doing it to eliminate that possibility. But they can't do anything about it, or Syria couldn't do anything about it. Bashar al-Assad, how many times we sent missiles up in there, or any of the stuff we're doing here. Nigeria, Somalia, again here recently, back into Syria, again with some more anti-ISIS strikes that we claim. And there's no consequence to any of it, so there never will be. And so that's the belief, and I think it's the belief, too, that Iran can't do it, and that they won't do it. And if they try, they won't succeed, because and I've heard this from a couple of different sources in recent days, from very high ranked people, that we believe at the higher levels that our air defense will work. I don't know why they think it. When we had demonstrations with the best integrated air defenses in Israel that the United States and Israel together can put together, it went through that. I don't know why you think that ours will, but somehow they do. So no, to answer your question, I don't think that we recognize that Iran has any kind of a right to establish deterrence, or try to, or that they have a capacity if they wanted to. It would be foolish. But I think that ultimately we think that we can go in for free and attack, and they won't do anything like Venezuela. So I think that they have been seduced into belief that nothing will ever happen, because it hadn't in Iran, it didn't over here. And I think one day that all of that foolishness is going to be exposed, and it's going to be bad.
Yeah, well, it just seems like Iran might be the probably the worst country in the region to attack. Again, not only is it big, it's powerful, and it sees this as an existential threat, suggesting it will fight till the end. But I was there back in May in Tehran, and I was there with Alistair Crook and George Galloway, Max Blumenthal, and others. And one of my takeaways there was the profound like martyr culture. I mean, well, I don't want to compare too much with the United States, but in the U.S., they have this strong, die free, or rather die free than
Live
live
free or
as a
die.
slave. Yeah, there's something strong about this. We're not gonna live on our knees. We'll rather fight and die. And the Iranians also have a very powerful martyr culture. I just don't see them being accepting any subordination or humiliating position. It just seems like these are the last people you want to fight with.
Yeah, and Glenn, I think the reason why we haven't seen that manifest up to this point and all that list of things that I just mentioned is because we made it clear, we signaled ahead of time that we did not want a general war with Iran. And if we got one, that they recognize that we can bring profound amounts of firepower down on top of them from all over the place that would cause profound damage. So they had an incentive to take it on the chin a few times here, and to take the missiles, to take the destruction of their embassy, to take the assassination of people, because they could survive it. They could live to fight another day. What's different this time is that we have set for the first time an existential threat to the regime that says you are the target this time. There's no taking it on the chin. There's no little shot here. We're coming for your regime. And now then you have changed the dynamic. That's what's important. And I don't think enough people in the West recognize that we are changing the dynamics now that in the same logic that led the weaker Iran not to want to retaliate in those other cases is now flipped on its head. And now you are leaving them the only choice is to fight back with all they have. Otherwise, the regime is going to die. And I don't think we understand that we have changed the conditions for that.
Well, nobody wants to fight against the United States, though. I mean, of all countries in the world, I think all countries would like to avoid this at all costs. The US is immensely powerful. And but as you said, I think this is an excellent point. When your downfall is the only alternative, if countries are pushed into the corner, they might do crazy things. Not crazy, but actually accept that, okay, we need a war with the US. I was wondering if you see some of the same logic with Russia or China, because many people in the US kind of concluded that, look, well, after we did what we did to Venezuela, it showed how weak the Russians were. They didn't stand up for their friend. But, I don't think anyone ever suggested that the Russians would do. How would they sail up into America's backyard and start fighting with America? I mean, it was fantasy. No one ever made that argument. But Iran is very different, though. If you're Russian or Chinese and you're watching the possibility of Iran being destroyed, that instability, it might be a strategic stepping stone towards a war against them. So do you think they would go to a large extent to assist Iran to make sure that they do not fall?
Yeah, I'll let me address that secondarily. But first, I want to point out something that I think also bears involvement, and that is from the Iranian perspective. I think that they paid attention to Hezbollah in last year or a year or so ago, when the Israelis had been attacking. Of course, they had gotten into a direct conflict. Israel actually invaded into southern Lebanon, and they were going into these attacks. Now, at that time, the claim was that the Hezbollah had over 100,000 rockets of various types, some of which were very, very good, and that they could saturate the air defense systems of Israel if they wanted to, and that they could cause profound damage. That never happened. And then you saw that the regime, the Hezbollah regime there, that with Hassan Nasrallah, that they had these and apparently thought that, well, I don't want to use them because then I can invite this stuff back, et cetera. But then he got assassinated. All of his senior people, they almost decapitated the whole government. And then finally it got to Nasrallah themselves, and all those rockets stayed in their sheaths. They never used them. So Israel never had to pay a price for that. I think that Iran is thinking, we're not going to repeat that. I would imagine, I've not seen anyone, I've certainly not talked to anyone in Iran, but I can't imagine that they did not pay attention to that and see that if the Hezbollah actually had that kind of an arsenal, they kept it in the sheath, and he went to his grave never having used it. And I can't imagine that the Ayatollah would repeat that mistake. If he sees it's going to get to that point again, that he would use his missile arsenal, which is, of course, much bigger and more powerful than Hezbollah. So that's one of the things I think that Iran is learning a lesson. Back to the back to the Russia-China angle on this. I still don't think that they would be willing to go to the mat to fight the United States even over this. I think that they will be helping Iran in some ways. I'm guessing because a lot of a lot of flights have gone in from both capitals to Tehran, so we're left to guess and wonder what's actually on those. But I'm sure they're helping them with technology, maybe air defense capabilities, to give them more robust capability to defend themselves. But even if Iran falls, I can't imagine that they would go to war with the United States, because the cost would be astronomical, and it could go nuclear. And so I don't think either one of them wants to do that. But I also can't imagine that they would take this lying down and just say, bummer, because then that would make them both look even more weak, and would make us believe our own press even more that we're this unstoppable force and we can literally do anything. And I think that they would probably take some asymmetrical problems or attacks against us. And I think they would start working against our interest in other ways that would be harder to detect, but could have more impact long term. That's undermining the dollar. Working against our business interest in some places like that, maybe some more cyber attacks, et cetera. So I think that they would do stuff to defend their own selves, because they also have to make sure that they don't come off looking weak to the BRICS. They want to show that they're, a powerful alternative economically and stability-wise. But if they show that they're utterly impotent in the face of U.S. military force, then that's going to make people hedge and say, maybe we better not be putting our eggs in the basket of China and the BRICS, because they can't even defend themselves. But if they see that that we don't succeed there and we stumble militarily, and because of some help that the Iranians by themselves are able to stand up to us, then it has the opposite effect. And now it makes people think, it's America that doesn't look stable. I'm going to put more of my eggs in the BRICS basket. And then that leads to a further weakening of the dollar. And that's been going down for quite some time. And then you could have a situation to where China and Russia don't have to fire a shot, and they can watch us self-destruct.